Let's go ahead now and go to clip number 14. Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, International Communism Introduced. Here's that clip.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, every country has its own problems, its indigenous peoples and its wildlife. This International Conservation Bank must know no frontiers, no boundaries. Its funds must be used constructively and not to be challenged into greedy hands or weapons of destruction.
So here are these people always financing revolutions and wars and weapon systems, and you call that communism introduced. Why do you say that?
Yes. In other words, the currency will be used as a communal device because there will be one world currency. And he's saying, too, as I recall in the speech, that each country also has its own indigenous people, and they'll be allowed to have soft currencies, but the currencies will be intermingled. And
yeah, you're going to have a global currency over the regionals, which they're now setting up. It's amazing 23 years later to see all of this actually unfolding. And also Ban Ki-moon, a month and a half ago in the New York Times, Secretary General of the UN, he said all nations will be forced to pay into the UN to fund this. Let's play clip number 15. Rothschild brags. Here it is.
If there are any Japanese in the audience, I would apologize to them, but I've had very great experience in Japan, since my family has had connections with them since 1865 after Perry opened them up in 1863.
Let's play another clip. Let's have Michael Sweetman, James Baker quote, clip number 16. Here's Michael Sweetman, James Baker quote. Here it is.
At his keynote address to this Congress, U.S. Treasury Secretary James A. Baker pointed to the, I quote, the underlying reality that sound conservation is good economics. And further, conservation should not be the enemy of prosperity. It should instead sustain and enrich our prosperity. Unquote.
How do you decipher that, decode that, George Hunt?
Well, I couldn't hear him very well on that. I have to beg.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem today is you're having trouble hearing. That was the James Baker quote by Michael Sweetman?
Oh, yes. I set that up for you to play because James Baker made a remark that caused the conservationists to tremble at the beginning of the meeting. He gave the keynote address, and he said that conservation required growth and development. And the conservationists said, what? You could hear the murmur in the audience. Well, what that means is that Rothschild, in order to be the positive synthesis of growth and development and economics, has to have a dynamic going. It has to be a forceful opposition in order for his group to go in and pick up the pieces and take over control. So he's encouraging this war between conservation and development, and he is the synthesis of all the stuff that will come out of the war.
Now, for those that missed it, I want to play banker David Lang talking about their elitist program and how to deal with the cannon fodder one more time, and then two final clips we haven't played yet. Play clip 17. It's so chilling. Here is clip 17.
David Lang from Montreal. He's always full of awkward questions, this chap.
Until recently on the balance sheet, there were billions of dollars still listed as existing, which have now been written off. And so those surpluses have a bad habit of disappearing when the auditor finally gets his hands into the balance sheet. I suggest, therefore, that this be sold not through a democratic process. That would take too long and devour far too much of the funds to educate the cannon fodder, unfortunately, which populates the earth. We have to take almost an elitist program that we can see beyond our swollen bellies and look to the future in time frames and in results which are not easily understood or which can be, with intellectual honesty, be reduced down to some kind of simplistic definition.
Okay, George Hunt. George, I want to ask you about this Maharaja clip where he questions Michael Sweetman's words. We're going to play this clip and then get you to comment on that, okay? All right, good. Here is the Maharaja questions Michael Sweetman's words. Here it is.
I'll be very brief. I've been listening patiently to Michael Sweetman's paper and the discussion so far. I'm confused, particularly since I am the president of the World Wildlife Fund India, an NGO, of the need of another helping hand. But since this baby has been accidentally conceived by Michael Sweetman, and I presume that he's either a very foolish man or a very clever man. I think he's a very clever man, because the paper does not give any details. It's very general.
Wow. So the Maharaja is pointing out this gives a blank check of power to this World Congress, instead of the World Wildlife Fund set up by the Nazi Prince Bernhard to carry out extermination. What's going on in that clip with the Maharaja?
Well, the Maharaja saw the light. He saw that either it was a very foolish plan that Michael Sweetman was introducing, to save the world's conservation, or it was a clever plan. And he didn't identify why it was clever, but he said, but I believe it's a clever plan. It's a clever plan because it seems to appear that they are saving conservation. And I think that's what the Maharaja saw. They were going to get money out of it instead of nice, pretty new trees. It's a clever plan.
And everyone laughs because they understand that of course, it's a joke. That's why they're there, is to get their hands on property and control the world population. So he's stating the obvious.
I asked him as an official host, when is this bank going to come to pass? And what I got out of them was there will be a collapse in 2012 of the world currencies, and that the World Conservation Bank will come in to save the world, so to speak.
Stay there. This is incredible bombshell info. Stay with us.
Let's make it easier on
All right, I'm going to go ahead and just keep George Hunt till 40 after, so I can go to Mike, Herman, Terry, Ben, and a couple others. But he just dropped another big bombshell. Studying the UN zone documents, studying the IMF World Bank, the banks want to get everybody in debt, all the nations, all the sub-states within the nations, bankrupted to then make you dependent on them. And then under environmental rules, grab and snatch property and raise the taxes so you go bankrupt. Then they bring in a global regime, global rationing, openly being announced. This is their plan. They're brainwashing your kids in school. They're really trying it. Copenhagen was a big blow against them. The fact that their scientists know it's a fraud. Ben Santer at the UN admitting that it's all, made up, that they basically cut these sections out of the UN report, where their own scientists said man wasn't causing global warming, or they're covering up the fact for the last 9 years the earth has been radically cooling. All of this. And then he's saying he's there talking to Rockefeller, talking to others, specifically tell that story, and they're saying they're going to bankrupt the world in 2012. This is in 1987. Everything George talked about, he put this out 15 years ago or more, has now come true, really proving what he's saying. But specifically, take your time. Who said this again? Was it Rockefeller? I'm going from memory. At this conference, they said how they're going to do it and make the World Conservation Bank take over.
Okay. It was you remember I was there for 3 days asking lots of questions, okay? So the questions evolved to, number one, the question I had was, how is this bank going to be funded? I learned through the guests there, maybe I went to McNeil of the United Nations, I don't know where, but I found out that the plan is, and this is hearsay, that the plan is that the bank is going to bankrupt in 2012, and that the elite that put money into the bank, when it bankrupts, those elite people will go into the bank, take it over, and take over every mortgage, everything, all the accounts, all the credit cards, everything that people have, and the bank will then officially be in Rothschild's hands, where before it was surreptitiously in Rothschild's hands.
Well, this is incredible. Let me stop you, and I want you to elaborate, George Hunt.